Welcome, everyone. This is a well-attended technique, motivational interviewing. In the traditional sense, I was taught more non-directive tools with motivational interviewing. Today, you're going to experience a very directive approach with directive questions with rationale as to why. I guess I wanted to start with kind of a interesting story, and I don't know how many people can relate to this one. But early into the middle of my career, I would say my show rate for parents or caregivers, or even in couples work when I needed to have one of the spouses or significant others there, they wouldn't show up. And I would get a lot of just fix my kid. So I would have what's called a lot of cognitive dissonance because I'm a social worker, and in school it was kind of like from day one the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and I just knew that train wrecks could happen if I don't engage the caregiver or parent or the family. One, the child could do great under individual treatment, whether it's cognitive behavioral, any kind of individual treatment that I would use, play therapy for younger children, only to see that relapse would occur because the parents didn't change. And or the other thing is that it could actually make the child worse because then the parents could say when the child relapsed, see, I told you the child wasn't going to change, and I could set up the kid. So I would go home very stressed in my mind with cognitive dissonance. So as I show this, this is what I would use to kind of just say to myself, what's okay, Scott? Um, I would say things like, well, this parent or caregiver is untreatable. They're unworkable. They're unmotivated. They're resistant. That was a big one. And besides, I don't need them anyways. I'm just going to cure the kid. And hey, I have only a 50% no-show rate. Isn't that good? Well, when I went back to graduate school to pursue my PhD, I was really blessed to work as an intern for one of the founders of family therapy, Jay Haley. And I said to Haley during my internship, uh, the same things I'm telling you. And what he said to me surprised me. He said, Scott, I hate to tell you this, but you're the problem, not your parents. And I said, what do you mean? He says, look at the fruit. When your parents, when you say resistance or no show rates, or they don't do the homework or stop coming in, it's the best way they know how to tell you that what you're doing is not working. And if you don't believe me, ask them yourself. So I was like, okay. So I did. And so the fruit of that research study is going, and what I found surprised me. And so I'm going to tell you what happened in just a moment. So I just want to welcome you to today. I'm Dr. Scott Sells. If you have not seen me before, welcome to the Family Trauma Institute family. If you have seen me before, welcome and thank you for continuing to look at my life's work in the niche of working with the whole family that's traumatized, not just the child. So the book that you're gonna see with the techniques is that the mission of the family systems trauma model is really at the Family Trauma Institute. We want to train the mental health community, and I define that as both clinicians and non-clinicians, folks that are parent support advocates, case managers, to really master these family systems trauma techniques. And there's 12 in this book. Um, and plus two bonus, 10 plus two bonus. So the one I'm going to show you today is the FST motivational technique. There's the stress chart, the C tree diagram, our undercurrents, stabilization versus active trauma first, how to engage the extended family, safety first, feedback loops and undercurrents, what we call trauma playbooks, dress rehearsals and troubleshooting, relapse prevention, and structural strategic theory, and how to integrate nutrition. So I'm going to talk about the motivational technique today. And next month, I'm going to be doing relapse prevention. So if you like my teaching style, you like the concreteness that you can walk away with something you can use tomorrow, you like the videos of real families I show, which I'm going to show today, please think about coming next month. Relapse prevention struggle to triumph, because we sometimes start well with diagnostic and assessment, but can we end as well as we start? So I hope that you can register on demand or not. We've got about 400 people registered for this one. So for those of you who are here watching on demand, thank you. And for the 131 that are here live, thank you for coming as well. So what I'm also going to do at the very end is say, if you want to go deeper in this, I'm introducing what's called a 3-day masterclass, and I'll share with you just briefly a little bit at the end if you want to go deeper. All right, so here's the 5 takeaways. One, why is the motivational technique so important to you? What is the difference between a soft and a harsh startup to begin treatment? What is the 5-question motivational script that you can use the next day at work? Uh, and really using 3 mini case examples and next steps. So if you've seen this technique before, there's a real fresh coat of paint metaphorically, because you're going to see new families. In fact, you're going to see the motivational technique that I did with the family just as late as last week. So I hope that you'll really enjoy the case examples, but I'm also going to show you how to deliver the script, because you can have a good script, but you have to have good delivery. Let's go to takeaway number 1. Why is this so important? I'm going to make a case for this right now, why it's absolutely critical that this is, and what Haley also told me was a famous quote that he wrote in his book. He said, for Scott, I believe for therapy to end properly, it must begin properly. So I'm going to repeat that again and come back to this quote. For therapy to end properly, it must begin properly. I'm going to tether back to that quote in a moment. So here's the poll question. And you can just type 1, 2, 3, or 4 in your chat bar. What is the top barrier or challenge you experience when trying to engage parents or caregivers? Is it the parent's mindset of just fix my kids? Is it I can't see their role? They just can't see. They got a high threshold of blindness or deafness. They can't see the role in the child's problem. There's generational trauma really impacting the parent even wanting to come in. They're scared to even think that you're gonna, get to some of the family secrets. I'm an outsider, especially if I work for Child Protective Services. You're the enemy. I'm going to isolate myself. So, which one of these would you say are some of your top ones? So, I see Angie says 3, generational trauma. Carol is 2. Uh, Karen's 1, 2, and 3. So, yes. And a lot of you might say all the above, or you might even say it's not even on the list. My biggest challenges were 1 and 2. When I work with families, I could just not get past that piece where I just can't see it. I just want you to fix. And even in the mindset of our culture today, we want to drive through breakthrough. So I even had some of the parents just almost say to me, just tell me when to come back. I'm going to go, when I worked with residential, almost like the Disney World. So metaphorically. So this was huge. And so the evidence really supports how important it is to break through this traditional barrier that we sometimes face. What I saw here is, did you know that there was a great book done? It's called The Heart and Soul of Change. And these researchers found out that there is 4 factors that indicate the most amount of change in treatment. And they said 30% out of 100% is your relationship with the client. and if you can get the right people on the bus and to show up. Only 15% is technique, 15% expectation that things are going to change, and 40% is can you generalize what you do in treatment into the real world. So 30% of change is definitely connected to this technique. That's big. The other thing is the statistics are sobering. Um, First of all, the no-show rate happens when there's not good pre-session preparation, where my preparation used to be a phone call and a reminder for the first appointment. And then 29 to 42% don't even begin treatment. Mine was 50%, I hate to say. And this is startling. They don't stay in treatment. So they may come the first time, but 15 to 50% don't show up for a second appointment. So the other thing that's really ironic is that you cannot treat an empty chair. And so if I'm doing billable rates, I can't bill an empty chair. I know that if I can treat the child in that chair, but the other chairs are all empty. What's that going to do relapse wise? So let's go to takeaway two. This goes to Haley's question, harsh versus startup. So when Haley said, I'm throwing down the challenge, Scott, if you don't believe me, ask him yourself. Well, I did. And I'm a researcher where it's called grounded theory, where you actually ask the participants that you treat, what they think. In this case, the families that I treated, the parents. And here's what they said. A light bulb moment came on. Most of the parents that I interviewed said that we don't mean to be rude, Scott, but we've been in treatment a lot. Okay. And they don't always say this word directly, although some did say the beginning of treatment is harsh. What you do is you make a phone call to schedule the first appointment or meeting, but there's just no relationship. And sometimes we've been in treatment where the counselor doesn't even call us, it's the front office. And we're sitting there going, this is scary for us. And so what happened was that they were saying, we want a soft startup. We want to come to the first meeting relaxed, trusting, receptive. And with the FST motivational phone call, we could create this soft startup. Now, when I went to some of the motivational research that I saw, which is excellent, by the way, I saw that it was more non-directive. And I thought to myself, what if we could be more directive in our questions? And so I also tethered this relationship building to three more points that's really critical. Number one, people don't care how much you know until they first know how much you care, or you never have a second chance to make a first impression. And ironically, Theodore Roosevelt famously said that. The second one I found out was much more important. You can't persuade your clients, clients persuade themselves. Now, in the video examples I'm going to show you today, I want you to be asking and listening for that when we ask these strategic motivational questions, I'll pause the tape and you can actually hear the parents persuading themselves that not all is lost. The parents persuading themselves that their child is not so bad as they might have thought before the phone call began. So we are in a position sometimes where we try to, convince people to show up. I used to use the term like when I did group therapy, I'd say there's free pizza. Like that would do it. Sometimes it did. But I didn't realize that maybe I'm working harder, not smarter, where it's more powerful if you can get the clients to persuade themselves. How many of you, by a show of hands, think that that's a good paradigm shift? Okay. If clients could persuade themselves and we can be a facilitator um, it could be a game changer. So I hope I can convince you of that one. And then the other one is, and I'm seeing a lot of hands raised there. The other one that I thought was important is that parents are not resistant, like I used to say to make myself feel better earlier in my career, but competency is quiet. It tends to be overlooked in the noise and clatter of problems. How many of you know that the parents that we see and talk to, or kids, or any human being, there is an authentic self that is often very competent, but when there's noise or emotional traffic, that the competency gets buried. So these questions are also designed to quiet the noise and allow the parent or caregiver the breathing space to be able to say, I am competent. And you're going to hear an interview with Keisha, a single parent mom who's at risk of losing her children for homelessness, tell you how the motivational interview helped her see that she was competent. And this is before treatment even began. So the soft startup is what we've got to focus on. Here's the 5 questions for you, and you're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint slide deck and like Allison said, a recording, so you can sit back and relax because you'll be able to use these slides for your work going forward. So here's the question. When we used a very directive with MI questions to build on one another, this was a game changer. We found out that if the phone call lasted more than 15 minutes, however, it became a therapy session. And you'll even see that in one of the videos I show, I made a tactical mistake where I went 45 minutes on the phone, which lost its. So even the mild developer, you can make mistakes, and I'll show you how to avoid those in a second. But if you go beyond 15 to 20 minutes, it becomes a therapy session, not a motivational phone call. So I'm going to show you now in a moment how to bring this down to 15 to 20 minutes and not make the mistake I made last week. And I'll tell you why I made the mistake in a second. So each question has a suggested time period. And so what I'll do is I will actually have a clock in front of me to make sure that I'm looking at the clock to discipline myself. But even this first question is going to be like people want to vent their 10,000 defeats. So when you ask a mom or dad or caregiver, what are the most difficult experiences? They don't want to go 5 minutes. Some of your clients are going to want to go 55 minutes. So what are you going to do to keep those boundaries? Because you're going to have a lot more opportunity to answer this question when they show up for treatment. It's just the timing is not right here. Then you're going to pivot to what's called a really important moment, which is called a pattern interrupt. The client is not expecting you to shift gears to say, when I get to know you better, what qualities would I come to admire about you as a parent, a spouse, a person? And I will also add question 2B that you can add, when I get to know your child better, what qualities would I come to admire about them? This is a pattern interrupt because they're like, wait a minute, I've never experienced a phone call like this where you're asking about my strengths within the first 6 minutes. Very strategic, very directive, very purposeful. It moves the call from problem saturated, question 1, to quickly hope talk or solution focused. Okay, that's key. Then question 3 is called an implication question. Powerful question because people are thinking this in their head, or like Freud said, it's the tip of the tongue phenomenon. But when they start to say, when you ask, what do you think will personally happen to your child or your marriage or you personally, if the problems you described in question 1 remain unfixed, the next 3 months, 6 months, or a year from now. This is they're starting to persuade themselves when they say, oh my gosh, my kid's going to go down the tubes. They could die. Them stating this out is motivating themselves like, man, I need to get involved here. Now, again, the temptation is not to go to 2 to 3 minutes, but to talk forever here. That does not need to happen here to motivate the parent to show up and engage. Question 4, this is one of my favorites. Have you seen a counselor for these problems before? Don't tell me their names because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But if yes, what did the counselor miss with you? The reason I ask is I don't want to make the same mistakes twice. So you hear on one of the calls that the parents are saying things like, we never I never got tools, or I never was involved, or the changes didn't stick. They're handing you on a silver platter what they want you to do differently. They're giving you their needs so you can customize your benefit to their need. I'll show you this in a moment. And then do you want the problems you listed fixed fast, medium, or slow speed? And a lot of people will say fast, but I also want it to stick. So 5 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, 2 to 2 minutes. So let me show you a delivery tactic that will help you stick within this time frame. 3 case examples with process or delivery. 3 cases. So let me show you. We're going to do Brooke first and then go on to the next client. So let's talk about Brooke. 14 years old. Symptoms are really high disrespect, high anxiety. She's starting to move into really perfectionism, where it could even move at risk of eating problems or eating disorder, possible bullying. That's case number 1. Case number 2 is Lucy's story. This comes in the middle of treatment, where the therapist calls me in as a consultant and says, I've gone as far as I can with the family. The parents will not engage. I've got Lucy stabilized with self-harming, depression, but there's still aggression at home. And I'm afraid that everything I've done with Lucy for 6 months is going to unravel. So could you do these motivational questions in the middle of treatment? And I'm like, sure, you can use them at any time to jumpstart your clients. So you'll see that. And then you'll also see Keisha's story, where she's a single parent mom, homeless, at risk of losing her child, past sexual abuse as a child herself. She's had multiple treatment failures. And so she is pretty hard on herself. So let's talk about Brooke. So in the first question that I ask, which is 5 minutes, the mom starts talking on and on and on. And I could tell that if I don't do something, it's not going to be 5 minutes. It's going to be, 50 minutes. So here's the technique that you want to use. It's called stick and move. It's a metaphor that prize fighters have used, where if they don't stick and move, that they're going to get, hit by their opponent. In treatment, I found, and I was guilty with this, is that I always let people talk because I thought I would be rude if I interrupt. But what I found is context is everything. So stick and move, I'm going to show you the stick and move tactics. And you can use this with any model you use, because sometimes clients go on so many bunny trails that you lose the mojo of the question to begin with. And I was taught to say, don't interrupt people, let them talk forever. But it had what's called the law of diminishing return. So here's the 3, you know, anti-venom to or stick and move moves that you can make. And you're going to see I make these in the call. First of all, it's again, you're going to see a tactical mistake here right out of the gate. is that when I talk with Cheryl, who is Brooke's mom, I should have started the call with, before this is only a 15-minute call, Cheryl. Um, I may have to interrupt, and we can talk more in depth when I see you. Do I have your permission to interrupt because I don't want to seem rude? Again, I'm setting the boundaries before we even begin the call to put like guardrails in. And I've never had people say, "No, you can't. I don't want you to interrupt," because you do it in a very gentle way, and we have clear rationale. The move that I do make is that as Cheryl goes on and on, I say, "Let me stop you to see if I'm tracking you. Am I close or way off?" Now, when we interviewed clients around this technique, they said that even though the call was shorter than they thought it would be, the way we did it made them feel not just listened to, but heard. And a lot of clients pointed to this question. When you asked me, "Am I close or way off?" You gave me space to say, "No, you're way off." Or that, and I also heard that you really were tracking me. That helps. And people love the sound of their names. So you compliment the person. Mary, or this case, Cheryl, what you said was insightful. Let me see if I heard you. So if you don't stick and move on all these questions with these types of stick and move tactics, it's not going to be a 15 to 20-minute call. And I hope some of you will have questions at the end about this as well. So as questions come up, please go right to the Q&A bar. So let's go to this first video here and watch how this first question is. And remember, I make a tactical mistake at the beginning. I have no apology with the rationale. Let's listen to the call. What are some of the top things that are stressful for you right now with Brooke?
So first of all, I know that she has maybe like some non-family related issues that she wants to talk to people about. But in terms of our relationship, I feel like I'm like by nature I'm like a problem solver, and that's my go-to sort of response when someone tells me, or they have a problem, or when they seem to.
Yeah.
But that doesn't help our relationship, because she doesn't want that all the time.
Okay, you said something that was really important is that she's 14 now, I think. You and her used to talk all the time, but as she's becoming a teenager, is it more like you're trying to walk that tightrope, Cheryl, of when to be mom, when to be friend, and also to try to figure out the best way to help your daughter who may have ADHD or does through teenagehood, which can be difficult in the best years? Is that close or way off?
Well, it's close, but so she's my only daughter, so I know other people tell me, hey, that's typical for a teenager,
Okay.
they tend to they don't like you, they don't want to hang out with you. I wouldn't say that we've ever really been like close friends, like some
Okay.
parents.
Okay, so the question does not last more than 5 minutes because I do the summary. Now, she didn't say all these words like, what I hear you say is she's, you're trying to decide whether you're a parent, whether you're a friend, but that was the essence of what she's saying. So when people are talking, you kind of have to listen to that. What is the real theme of what they're saying? So how did I do on this question on a scale 1 to 5? Did you think I did pretty good with the stick and move? Uh, one being that, Scott, you didn't do so well. No, no offense. 5, I thought you did pretty good here. What are some of the folks saying in terms of, how I might have done? Oh, you guys are nice. Britt gave me a 5. Paula gave you 5. Okay, now you got to say, why did you say? That gave me a 3. Okay, I'll take that. but I like how we learn from each other. Um, and that we put it out there because even when you make mistakes, I think we learn from them. And so this was a really good start to the call. And thank you for giving me your vote. Um, so the stick and move was I didn't do number one, I did number two, and I did not do three, but two and three are similar, except the difference is the complement part. Now let's go to question two. This is, I call it game changer because it's shifting it from problem focused to strength based. And it's a great question. You can even thread this through to therapy. Like what I'll say to the parents is like, hey, I know your child's not on the phone while you're saying all these great things about your child, but do you mind if I thread the needle where I can bring this question up when we meet in person and I can ask you again, like, you remember that phone call, Mom, when I asked you about strengths that you talked about with your daughter? Well, your daughter's sitting right here. Can you tell your daughter right now what are some of the things that you told me on the phone that are qualities and strengths that you really admire about your daughter? This is a great way to thread the phone call into the real face-to-face treatment. And then you can say to the child, hey, what are some qualities and strengths that you admire about your parent? Because the parent goes first, and then you follow up with the child. It's a great way to thread the needle from phone call to real life. So just that's a little bonus there. So let's look at the delivery points is that clients persuade themselves, competency is quiet, pattern interrupt. Those are the things I want you to see if you think these are happening. And if you do see them, put it in your chat bar. Like I just saw the client persuade themselves, and here's how. I just saw that the competency came to the surface. Here's how. I just saw a pattern interrupt where the client's like, almost like pausing, like, wait a minute, I'm not prepared for this question. So if you see that, so we'll start with Lucy and then go back to Brooke. Lucy's 16. And this one, I want you to focus on the clients persuading themselves. The competency is quiet. And I want you to focus on the pattern interrupt of this question. Now, this is important because when I asked the mom to talk about strengths about Lucy, this mom is extremely burnt out. 6 months of treatment, daughter is homeschooled because the bullying was so bad. They felt a lot of empathy for Lucy in the beginning, but over time, the reason around the trauma got less valid for them because Lucy started to get aggressive and, the symptoms started to grow like a spider on their own. And so she's fried. And she told the therapist, I don't know if I want to continue, but at least I'll do a phone call with Dr. Sells. So let's listen to mom start to persuade herself in the phone call.
If I get to know Lucy better, what are some qualities that I would really admire about Lucy?
She's very creative. She's really good at music. That's one of her passions. She's great at photography. She's really talented in photography. She does draw here and there. She doesn't think she's good, but I think she's pretty good at it. She's very strong-willed.
Okay, freeze it. Now, what will happen is you got to be prepared for this, everyone, this is called a compliment sandwich, which means that you'll hear a compliment sandwich where the parent will start off saying, well, here's what I admire about my child, but, or however, and then they criticize. Because remember, before this phone call, for many parents, that's what they've been great at. Neurolinguistic programming in their head, they're great at catching their kid doing something wrong. And so what happens is you got to either they'll pull themselves out of it, or you got to interrupt and stick and move and say to the mom, I know strong-willed, but go back to some of the strengths that you talked about, like, and then you give what she said. So you got to move the parent away from compliment sandwiches. Great kid, but they don't really do well in school, and I'm tired of it. And they could unravel every positive thing they said. So here, I don't take the bait and go, oh, tell me more about the strong-willedness, because I know that'll go into problem-saturated talk. But she pulls herself out of it on her own. But I just want to let you know some of your clients are not going to pull themselves out of it. Let's go.
Which can be a good and a bad thing. But she's very creative. She's very intelligent. She has a lot of potential. And when you say
she's creative, is it when you say she's creative, Jennifer? Does that make you really proud of her?
It does. Yeah.
Okay. And give me an example of her creative side. Like, is she creative with art? Is she creative with people?
Yeah.
How is she creative?
With photography and her music. And she's always coming up with ideas to try and make money. So she's very entrepreneurial.
So one of the other things that you want to do is almost see that you're around a campfire, and you ever blow into the embers to get them to go? Well, metaphorically, what you want to do here is that when the client, in this case, the mom, says something positive, you fan the flames of hope and just say, you don't say, oh, next question. You say, could you give me an example? What does creative look like? And so you're allowing the client to fan the flames of hope and persuade themselves more, because she's now talking positive about her daughter, and she hasn't done that in a long time. And I'm going to tell you what she said at the end of the interview when I asked her what was most helpful about this phone call. You'll be surprised what she says. So, and I like what Paula said. Karen said she really liked the fire analogy. Thank you. I like the analogies too. Mom's talking positive and catching her daughter doing something right. So now let's shift gears back to Cheryl. This is another opportunity to do a pattern interrupt, and you get to see two case studies in one. And so let's go back to her. And let's see, I'm not tired or yawning. It just froze at the wrong part here. But let's listen carefully to Mom here. And as I get to know you better and Lori gets to know you better, would you say are some of your greatest strengths as a parent, as a mom?
I would, as a mom, I mean, I'm pretty stable and consistent. I've been, but what made me really reach out was that I was feeling like I was crying a lot, and I felt like that never happened to me before. Okay. And something was going on. And that's really what made me actually make the phone call. And it was actually kind of like a high intensity time.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I didn't really get any type of support in that regard. It took like 3 to 4 weeks to get someone to do an assessment. And
one thing I said as a strength with you is you don't give up easy. You're kind of like a mama bear. If your child is in trouble, you're stable. You're going to do whatever you can. You're going to crash through a wall if you have to for your child. You love your child so much that you will do anything to help them. I see that as a great strength. You're very resourceful and persistent. I don't know if people have said that about you, but I get that sense.
Well, I would say I'm resourceful and persistent, but I try not to be one of those parents who just, solves all their children's problems. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's important that they have their own experiences and they can solve their own problems, you know?
Cheryl, as I get to know, if I got to know Brooke better, what are qualities I would really admire about her?
Um, she has a very strong sense of social justice, you
Okay.
know, and fairness, and she's analytical, like abstract, like full, like philosophical, kind of like in her thinking.
I love that. Okay, so here's a tough question. You're going to have to do what's called supposition here because you're not seeing the whole call. But based on that interaction, do you have any clues as to why, in tone of voice or interaction, of why the question did not go 3, 4 minutes? It went 20 minutes. What do you think happened, if you had to guess, of why it went longer than I had hoped? Any guesses there? Dun, 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 dun. So Paul is saying that mom, Karen likes the positivity. Thank you for that. Well, because of time, I'm going to tell you what happened is that when you are starting to ask these questions, you also feel and sense on the call if the parent likes you, if there's, synergy, if, it's flowing like a river or it's choppy as Swiss cheese, and you're a human being, and you're trying to form a joining relationship. Well, felt like I wasn't connecting with mom. Like I just sensed on the phone, like when I would do my summary questions, that she's like, no. And then she would go into a long bunny trail. So I was overcompensating by saying, I'm going to keep asking her this question to see if there's a spark there. And instead of just saying to myself, I'm planting seeds, I'm not going to win the day all the time. It's not going to be always warm and fuzzy, but the mom is still getting my caring that I really want to know. And I'm even clumsy and awkwardly trying to summarize, even if I miss it, and move on, because now it's a law of diminishing return because I almost have a desperation to join. So I'm still engaging, but I can move on because I don't want it to be a therapy call. And that's kind of a high level thing and why we do the more advanced training, like the master class, so people can really get some of those nuances and try it out. But I just want to let you know that I had felt the anxiety and I wasn't saying to myself cognitively, it's okay, Scott. You laid the groundwork. You're like a farmer. Seed, wait, harvest. It doesn't have to be seed harvest. And so just watch that. It's called transference and countertransference. I hope that makes sense. So that was what was going on there. But overall, I mom was doing a good job where she was really talking about her competency. Now, as we start to move towards the end, I want to share with you Keisha's story. What I recommend as a bonus question is at the end of the 15 minutes, say, or close to the 15 minutes, say something like, could I switch gears for a second? I just want to know what was most helpful about this call. You won't hurt my feelings if you didn't think it was a good call, but it really helps me know if this is making an impact or not. And we don't typically ask people after a technique what was most helpful or even what was least helpful. We don't do this for the edification of our egos, but what happens is the client consolidates the gains they make by persuading themselves what was a difference that made a difference. And so here's Keisha's feedback from the motivational call, and listen for yourself. What was most helpful, do you think, about that interview, thinking back on it? What did it leave you with? What was helpful?
What that left me with was a sense of hope, because I was able to really take a step back out of the situation and just look at myself and just understand, like, hey, you really are very smart, and hey, you really are a strong person. That helped, because sometimes when you're going through crises, or when you are in the midst of different changes in life, you as a person don't really look at yourself. You just, as a person, you look at yourself as the victim, or you look at yourself as help me, but you never look at yourself and say, I am strong. And that kind of gave me another bird's eye view to look at my strengths versus my weaknesses. That it kind of shed the light on the strengths that and qualities, good positive qualities that I do possess, versus the negative qualities that we all have and the weaknesses at that moment. Your approach let me know that you wanted to get to know me as a person, and not as a statistic, or not as a person that you could just prescribe medication to.
Yeah, so in other ways, what you've experienced before has been more of a harsh startup, where you felt more like a number, or just just a phone call. Here, by taking the time with these questions to look at your strengths, you left feeling more hopeful. Is that close?
Yes, I left feeling more hopeful, and I left feeling that I'm going to get help, versus the traditional situation when someone's in a crisis. You send them to a psych ward, possibly stick them in seclusion, or because they have voice being a threat to themselves or other, but you never get to the root of why they feel that way. And I just believe your soft approach has allowed me to get to the root of a lot.
So she's really self-disclosing her childhood a little bit, about how she's had treatment where they stuck her in a room in seclusion. So she felt from this phone call that her competency was risen to the surface. So I hope this really encourages you towards this. So, and I want to have some time for questions. So let's review what we learned today. Here's my call to action. Try it out. See it for yourself. When you get the script or the slide deck, watch the video again. Maybe share it with a colleague. Some agencies have done what's called a brown bag lunch, where they watch the webinar again. They pause it and they say, let's talk about this as a group. This can be a catalyst to change agency operating system as well as individual practitioners. Realize that these are the milestones that you're going to look for, performance-based benchmarks, I call them. You want to get your show rate to increase to 80% or higher. In fact, one of the research things you could do internally is that if you have a two-parent family, on purpose, only call one of the parents with the motivational questions, and then don't call the other parent or have them on the speakerphone and give them the motivational questions. You watch and see that the parent that does not get the motivational questions will come in like this with their arms crossed. And you watch the parent that does get it, you'll notice a huge difference. One, you'll be stepping on a moving train, and the other will be parked at the station. You also want to see if your client's motivation and hope increases. Well, we definitely saw that with Keisha in one phone call. And then, are you personally inspired? I think in today's world of mental health, with the great resignation and the burnout rate, we've got to be inspired, because we experience what's called secondary trauma. And again, remember, what you're contending for is this 30% pie chart, which may even be more than that. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the therapy can begin with the first phone call. So these were, I hope that when you leave here, you go, yes, God answered this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. And so I usually get the question with this kind of technique, what is a possible next step? Well, there's a couple things. One is, of course, you can keep attending the uh, webinars each month, get to know the model more and more. You can get the book, try to self-teach yourself. But some of you may want to say, I want to learn this. So I listened to people the last 2 years and they're like, I like your self-directed 12-week course, or I can go online. I like your office hours, but I need speed. I need to learn this. I want to do it live with you. So I'll either do it with the agency or in this case with practitioners and non-clinicians. So I know the timeline might be a crunch for you, but if this interests you, I've limited to 30 seats. There's only about 10 left. Please consider it. Allison will put the agenda in the chat bar and take a look at it. Because I think what you'll like is day one, I really focus on phase one of the model where you walk out of there going, okay, I've got the script. We're doing breakout groups. I'm getting questions in real time. We're doing this together where I know the motivational technique, the stress chart, and the C tree diagram much more confidently, where I don't have to go back to graduate school, but I can do family systems trauma with confidence. And then day two, you learn how to decide with the family. Are we going to stabilize first? Are we going to do active trauma work? Are we going to do a combination of both? How am I going to engage the extended family? And how am I going to deal with safety first before we go into in-depth root work? And then day three, how am I going to take this assessment data, convert it into architectural blueprints or called feedback loops of the dances? How am I going to give the family a concrete plan to get unstuck? How am I going to do dress rehearsals? And how am I going to nail relapse prevention? I did the master class recently. I just want to show you a few snapshots from it to inspire some of you. Is that here, went to Elizabeth Layton Center in Kansas, and they wanted to become a family trauma center of excellence. So I did the master class with them and their whole agency, or a lot of it. And here's a dress rehearsal practice where you can see here that they take a case and they map it out with the feedback loops, the playbook. They try out the techniques in real time. You can see the script on the table there. And I was just touched because they just wrote me these notes at the end. And they said, thank you for giving me knowledge and confidence to help my clients. You've given me hope so I can now give it to families. Norman wrote, I appreciate your grace and your humor, and the stories were energy, infectious. Thanks for everything. So these folks left with so much more confidence, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. I love what I do because I get to help people know how to do family therapy with excellence without having to go back to graduate school. So if you just go to familytrauma.com and scroll to the bottom, you'll see the registration link for it's the same 12 techniques, but some people want it, within 3 days, virtual live. Some people want the online course, which is going to be starting April 12th. It fits whatever fits your lifestyle. In the past, I only did an online course. This year, I've heard people say, I also want a 3-day masterclass. So I also felt, because this is my initial kickoff, my mission, of course, is just to really look at, an in-depth learning of the 12 techniques, learn with confidence, also have you walk away with the CE units. It's open to both clinicians and non-clinicians. And the book comes also with it. And I just want to share with the masterclass, we're going to be practicing delivery in real time. You're going to have scripts for each technique. You're going to learn how to adapt this for individuals and couples. After graduation, if you want to go on for coaching or certification, you can, or you can stop at the master class and you'll get the electronic version of the Treating the Traumatized Child. So, and the cost, I've tried to bring it down as much as I can to $595, one payment or two. So, a surprise I felt like after just praying about this is that I want to do something to just, I know I just have this feeling that there's at least 2 or 3 people out there that say I'm a new student fresh out of graduate school. I can't even afford the $595, or I can only afford a partial amount. So I'm going to offer 2 scholarships for this one coming up. So if you're out there and say, man, I want to master this, and you want to email me, first come, first serve, and you can pay either partial or you need a full scholarship. This is just from my heart to yours, is that I want to help people really learn this stuff, because guess what? We need this. Our families need this today. So, so either do the master class, which is coming up, or wait to do the online course because you want to do it over a 12-week period. So I wanted to stop there and, ask Allison for some questions. I see some hands raised as well. So, and I'll stay a little bit over. If you have to leave at the top of the hour, no worries, because it is going to be recorded. But I want to stay as long as people need me to answer some questions or comments about what you saw today. So, Allison, I will ask if there were some questions or comments for me to answer.
Okay. So the question was, under stick and move, am I close or way off? When someone says that you are way off, and then what they say contradicts what they've said before, what do you do?
At this point, you're joining with them. So you're not trying to no confrontation. So you just go with the flow and say, I'm sorry. You were saying, again, and then I repeat back, now I get it. So what I heard you say the second time was this and that, and the client really appreciates that. They're like, wow, you told me you didn't hear me, and then we struggled again. And you're role modeling what you hope to do later in treatment, is that the parent and children cross wires. They don't always get it the first time. The husband and wife or the boyfriend, girlfriend, as leaders of the family, don't get it. So you're role modeling that I didn't get it the first time. Let me see if I can get it again. So that's an excellent question. And one of the reasons why I do the master class is to really get into those kind of meaty questions as well. So thank you for that. What's the next question?
Okay. The question is about how this might work for parents who are divorced and hate each other.
Yeah. You've heard the term divide and conquer. So what'll happen is that you're joining with the person that makes the referral. And you're trying to say, man, I know from this call that the ex-spouse is key here, but I don't, and you even inquire about that at the end of the call, and they're like, no way, no how. And then a lot of times what I'll do is, well, can I at least do the motivational call with a sign release? What do we got to lose? And I'll see how, workable this is. So when the person sees that you've got confidence and the questions are very systematic and ordered, they may say, you know what? I felt good about this call. I might be willing for you to divide and conquer. And I might even say, when we do the stress chart, I may have to do it in 2 separate rooms. So again, you're giving the client the opportunity to think about an intractable problem from a different angle. So it's useful in that way. Not all clients, but a lot. Next question.
Actually, Dr. Sells, it's 1:00. and I'm just going to leave it with this comment from John Kennedy. Dr. Sells, you are like wine. You keep getting even better with age. Thank you, John.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate I hope to see some of you at the master class this time or next time, but I'm really enjoying that format that's going to be happening. And so thank you for sharing my life's work. And again, I say this often, but I gotta keep saying it. Thank you for taking a risk on thinking about working with the whole family. It's scary sometimes. And trying out new techniques to expand your range. We need you so much today, and I'm so blessed to have you as part of the family and community. So thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Take care. Bye-bye.